it's more than just, having a lot of companies add multi-factor authentication or the things that, the end user can physically see or they have to do. And now I'm getting a one-time password in a text message. That's great. But it goes deeper into the privacy security layers of how we keep the data, how we're stewards and how we're guardians of that information, that we can collect it, we can use it, and we can properly be custodians of it to help uplift and increase and enhance services that we all offer by keeping that trust in. You can give us information, you can interact with us, we're going to use it in a secure way, we're going to be the guardians of your information, but use it kind of like I always say the Hippocratic oath of we will do no harm.
Welcome to the Information Week podcast. I'm Senior Editor Jean-Pierre Ruth, and in this episode, we are taking a look at predictive data. In predictive data, we trust. There are a lot of different ways that organizations can look and try to make use of data to get some perspective, some, dare I say, foresight on how things might shape up, how they might approach, what their efforts might be going forward. But we also want to look at some of kind of like the nuts and bolts of the decision making, the questions that organizations have before they decide, yes, we've read the tea leaves, the digital tea leaves, and now we're just going to launch into whatever the data has just told us to do. At least it's not going to be as blindly following as that. So for this episode, I am joined by Harry Folloder, Chief Digital and Technology Officer for Alorica.
Good morning.
And Brooke Huling, Chief Product Officer for Accruent. Brooke, Harry, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, JP.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having us.
Great. Okay. All right. So let's just kind of like, before we get into kind of breaking out the tech side and the operation side, let's just kind of like talk a little bit about organizations, wanting actionable insights from data. For both of you, what are some kind of key elements that you see might be necessary to kind of like really say, okay, we were looking at data, we want to kind of draw, try to put this into some kind of predictive model. What's really essential to ensure that what you're looking at is going to be reliable?
Brooke, if you want to go first, I'm happy to have you go first. Definitely.
Sure. I will give you one of my favorite use cases right now as the Chief Product Officer. We're obviously building a lot of different technology into our applications while also consuming some ourselves internally. And one of the things that we do most often is rapid experimentation and testing. So as we think about how we need all of this data to be exposed in our products for our end users and customers, we have to build trust for them, but we also have to build trust ourselves in what we're looking at. So we follow a quick experimentation model and we do things in short increments, and we are always pushing the data to see how the accuracy, litmus test it, and then we continue to iterate to see if we can get further and further, I'll say back in time as our data becomes more predictive. Harry, how about on your side?
I know that's some great insights. We have actionable insights has become one of those key buzzwords in business today, where I think it's replaced maybe out of the box thinking, or probably more the aspect of big data. Now it's actionable insights. Trash in, trash out is kind of the favorite saying is that how can you expect some reliable information and predictive actions if you just don't inspect on what's coming in? And I think that's where the point comes in, is understanding where the actual data flows come from, right? Data governance, and most importantly, I think kind of data sources and understanding where they come from and the cleanliness of all of the information that are feeding into the modeling that are giving you these predictions. Understanding where they come from, how reliable are they, is all predicated upon the actions that are being taken to generate that data. Because all data is really the historical recording of actions. Understanding the actions that are preceding that data recording is imperative to understand the predictability and, most importantly, accuracy and reliability of the information or the insights that are being suggested. And I hope that answers your question.
Sounds good. Sounds good. All right. Thank you both for that. We're just going to dive a little bit deeper for each of you on your respective aspects of this conversation. All right. So Brooke, on the operations side, let's go a little further, talking about like what kind of essential indicators really best inform, business strategy that comes from data. What type of data is real and vital for forming strategies, campaigns, that are going to really be relevant.
Yeah, absolutely. So on the product side, we are looking for a lot of different elements of data. We're looking at market information. We're looking at trends in big industries. So we get into some really interesting elements of data that we have to base a lot of, frankly, very big decisions on that kind of information. Having the level of trust and confidence that we need in that mostly public information takes a bit of getting used to as we work out different models and how we look at things. But then we move very quickly into more customer-focused data. How are our customers using our products? What does that do in terms of our decision-making, influencing product roadmaps, other things of that nature? You mentioned in how we take things to market. That information will then transcend into other parts of our organization as our marketing teams look at information from our products. Our customer support and customer success teams will look at that same information, but now they're using it for their extended use case, which is how healthy are our customers? Are they happy? Are they getting the value out of our products and applications? So we really, in the role that product serves, we run the gambit of data from public sources all the way down to the tiniest information, including product clicks within the application. So my team is very well versed in leveraging all of that information from different sources. I would say the holy grail would be if I could combine it all in one place. That would be amazing, but we're not quite there yet. We're close, and building models on top of that. Harry, I'm curious to hear on the tech side, how do you think about everything I just described? There's obviously a lot of security and importance in the rigor that the tech side puts on that data. How do you handle that?
Yeah, so everything you just said excites me, but also scares me, because it's at the end of the day, listening to what consumers and customers say is important, but equally is the actions that they take are always not always equating to what they're telling you. So balancing this dimension or this metadata of what we call emotional intelligence versus the actual spoken intelligence, and combining those two helps make kind of the operational decisions easier or sometimes even trickier. But on balancing the security and privacy, it's always it's a interesting road to walk. You want to be able to provide the business with as much intelligence as you can, but you have an instantaneous possibility of losing trust. We all represent brands, or we all represent companies or own brands, and brand protection, trust and safety becomes the paramount kind of gold standard to ensuring that whatever service that we're going to deliver, whatever predictive information, whatever advice and guidance that we're providing to our companies, all that lead itself into boards, make sure that we have the utmost trust and confidence of where it came from that has this layer of protectionism. So balancing, how do you obfuscate the data? The base layers of understanding of kind of what I call the table stakes are things encrypted? Are they encrypted at rest? Are they encrypted at transit? Right? All this has become, or should become now in 2025, table stakes. We shouldn't have to ask these questions. They should be really more validation of you are doing this, right? Okay, great. Check the box, versus when are you going to be doing this? The obfuscation layers become really, how do you start to actually tie the information that somebody's telling you, or telling you through their actions and not telling you, in a way that can be equatable to properly market, to properly target, to properly deliver services, but still maintaining that privacy layer that I can't tie it back to a specific individual customer or consumer, because that's not correct in how we treat their data. So there are many different types of new technologies that allow that. And it's experimenting, Brooke, as I think you said at the very beginning, quick experiments, right? Quick, fast results. I think you guys are hitting it on the mark. Are we delivering the right value within the privacy layer, obfuscation layer, to deliver the business the information they need, while maintaining and holding true the secure delivery of obfuscated data that makes us have right business decisions? Or are we missing something? Is something not working where we have an obfuscation too much that we have information that says we should go left, but we don't know exactly where we go left, but we know we should go left because the data says so. But I don't know whether to go left in Jersey or go left in Montana because it's so generic that it doesn't help, that it's now all become noise. So finding that fine line of how do you cut through the static and noise with the right information, the right approach, and the right delivery at the end of the day to deliver kind of the ROI that you're looking for on that information that you're providing to your leaders.
Harry, just quick follow up on that. With that, the security and kind of privacy perspective is also a bit of compliance, like ensuring that the data is along with it's kind of bundled in there in terms of like how it's handled, how it's addressed, making sure that not only is it secure, but you're also making sure that this is meeting whatever body of standards that are out there that you need to comply with as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, all of our probably, in a former life as an attorney, I work with more attorneys now than I did even then, making sure that you understand the verticals or understand the industry that you're operating within, whether if it's, if you're operating within a healthcare environment, that you have the high trust protocols, that you're protecting HIPAA data properly, or, even in the bank financial services with PCI and all the other information, those relevant regulatory requirements are not just to be heeded, but it should be practically included in everything you do. Some of them are frameworks that are nice to have, but our take is that they're necessary as a need to have, and they should be just a base standard, and layering on the trust that you're developing with the services that you're providing. Because all it takes is a millisecond, as you both very well know, within the tech world, to lose trust. It takes forever to gain it and a millisecond to lose it. So those standards are there for a reason. Those regulatory bodies are there for a reason, for protectionism, for privacy. But at the end of the day, to develop and maintain the trust in the brand that you're delivering and the product you're delivering. And I think, Brooke, probably from a product side, you probably know that all too well. There's so much money spent on saving and or making sure that we have product loyalty, and a lot of that's based upon is it secure? Can I trust you?
Exactly, and having so many different business-facing software applications does put a lot of pressure on us. Customers just want to know that it's secure. Right? Everything about the application, the data that we're storing, the insights and intelligence that we're giving them, secure and trustworthy. And you said it very well. If you lose that trust, it's gone in an instant, and it's often not regained or takes years to regain.
I'll tell you one thing to add. It's also, it's more than just, having a lot of companies add multi-factor authentication or the things that, the end user can physically see or they have to do. And now I'm getting a one-time password in a text message. That's great. But it goes deeper into the privacy security layers of how we keep the data, how we're stewards and how we're guardians of that information, that we can collect it, we can use it, and we can properly be custodians of it to help uplift and increase and enhance services that we all offer by keeping that trust in. You can give us information, you can interact with us, we're going to use it in a secure way. We're going to be the guardians of your information, but use it kind of like I always say the Hippocratic oath of we will do no harm. And I hold ourselves as technologists and business leaders accountable to the same that doctors do. We should all take a Hippocratic oath with data as do no harm.
So one last question in terms for this part of the conversation for the both of you. How do you kind of gather data quickly enough, or how quickly must data be gathered for it to really remain relevant for that kind of predictive space? Like, okay, we've got data. It's a month old, a week old, a day old, 10 minutes old. What actually makes sense for it to actually continue to be relevant for the kind of effort to be part of your strategy and plans?
Well, if you ask my teenage daughter this morning, it's almost near time because I said something and she says, Dad, that was so yesterday. I'm like, no, it was just yesterday. Yeah, but it already changed overnight. And that's, I think, that's the world we live in today. An interconnected society has an ability to move at lightning pace. And that means ideas, that means trends, that means data changes in near time. And it's a very hard battle to keep up with. So I tell you that it's really a mix. It's really understanding your demographic, understanding who you're servicing, understanding what your business strategy is to help determine what's the length of time, like what's the, to use a nerd term, what's the TTL, right? What's the time to life? Is my data good for 3,600 seconds or is it good for 36 weeks? I think it depends on what you have. I think financial probably a little bit longer, but if you're in consumer expectation world, it could change on a dime. And understanding those sources, going back to kind of our original entry point, the product design that the incredible chief product or product officers out there like Brooke are intending are understanding that and understanding their demographic and understanding that certain things can have a longer shelf life of data, but other things we have to have indicators of how many clicks that somebody clicked on something yesterday in a certain area because there is an event, there is a product launch, there was a recall, there was something that happened that we need to know that's going to change. So building in a kind of a symbiotic approach and an orchestrated approach of when you need data in a just-in-time format and where you need it is it's a strategy. I don't think there's an easy answer to it.
Yeah.
I went everywhere, Brooke. Sorry.
No, my similar response is your mileage may vary. And I think that's why this is such a complicated topic in space now. It depends on the use case, the consumer of the data, exactly what they're trying to do with it. And then JP, the answer could be wildly different from it's out of date a minute ago to you can use the information from 30, 60, 90 days ago. And then I'll add one more interesting complexity that we're seeing on there from our customer standpoint. They want us to give them all of their data across their Accruent platform, including many other non-Accruent applications, modules, other partner tools, things of that nature. They want all of it in one place. They want real-time access to that, but then now they want data enrichment services and other information that is coming from outside sources to be coupled with product information and the things that we're storing. So now that's added a new level of complexity where the product information is real time as transactions go in and out of the system. But now you need a time-bound context for other information and data feeds that we're pulling in. So it also puts pressure on how you display that information. We've talked a lot about the security of it, but the display of that information and the way that a user can navigate that, drill in, really get insights, use an AI tool to interact with the information is also now top of mind. And what a year ago even was a nice to have is now table stakes when you're developing software, which has added a new level of pressure. I'm sure Harry can sympathize as you're looking for software tools for your own back office. That has now quickly shown up for us on a lot of different software RFPs and other things of that nature.
All right, great perspectives from the both of you. All right, now we come to the fun part where we are going to do our table exercises, or like I'm bringing out my game master screen because I'm a semi-retired tabletop.
I roll the dice.
I know I've got my bag of dice in the other room. Maybe actually I'll incorporate some of that into future episodes. All right, this is part of the show where we are going to kind of go through a table exercise where Brooke and Harry are going to be in essentially their respective roles, but at a fictional company that has got some curious ideas that they are putting on the table. And I'm going to ask them to give their perspectives on how they would address it as if they were, within this company, and then trying to sort out what is going to be the most benign way to handle these ideas. So, all right, this is another round of questionable ideas are us coming into working for. All right, so for the first scenario, so the sales department is eager to use predictive data to better understand customer buying patterns and needs. The team leader and the predictive data vendor propose gathering data from customers that may include very detailed, potentially personal information that your company typically does not collect. On the one hand, that could help predict when customers would need their next upgrade, contract renewals, purchases, what have you. But this also includes, depending on the type of customer, it could include using beacons at company locations to capture client data from their mobile devices, sensor data from products that they've purchased, digital twins in various forms of web scraping, all done somewhat unannounced via careful wording in terms of agreements. The predictive data analysis provider says that the most effective way to understand the customer's needs is to gather such information very extensively in this way, even if it falls in gray areas of unresolved state and federal policy. So Questionable Ideas R Us is about to enter into one of its most competitive seasons, and your CEO wants to deliver on the promised bonuses with a boost in revenue with this campaign. How do you strike a balance between tech ethics, policy, and the growth strategy that they want to go forth with? And yes, you have the option of saying that you then checking your resume to other companies after this.
Do we ask as a preceding question what the legal litigation budget is for this Questionables R Us company?
As far as they believe, they don't think they're going to need it, but at the very least, you know that the CEO has a golden parachute ready for themselves.
It all makes sense now.
Things that nightmares are made out of. Thank you, sir.
Yes, that's why it's called Questionable Ideas R Us.
I mean, secretive collective intelligence for everyone for sales related. I mean, it sounds fine. I don't see any risk here at all. I mean, it sounds fantastic. In fact, you should probably publish it on the company's Facebook page, to be quite frank with you. So, I mean, it's, that's the dilemma that sits today. So, one, I'd actually, from my chair, I'd actually question, do we have the right vendor? Because if you have a vendor who is not a vendor, but more of a partner, who should be a partner, they should be thinking these things with you, rather than suggesting questionable or ethically questionable things. Because, it goes back to just Questionable Ideas R Us want to have a really trusted brand in the marketplace for the longevity, or do you want to be featured in precedented court cases for the next 5 to 10 years with litigation budgets that are out the door? So from a tech perspective, I've had so many questions around and advice around, well, are we even at a base and fundamental level equipped to handle this type of information, let alone the questioning the ethics of it? I'll leave that to our incredible Chief Product Officer, Brooke, for Questionables R Us. But are we even equipped to handle the PAI levels? One, we need to make sure that legal is understanding jurisdictional prudence of not only state laws and federal laws, like you said, because each of the state laws, if you look at Illinois versus Texas, very different. Even if you thumbprint in on a time clock in Illinois, it's very different on how you keep biometrics. So we're even fundamentally and foundationally equipped to handle the type of data that we would even start collecting, regardless of, questionable terms of service and T's and C's that we slip into random things. Can we even handle the data that we would receive, let alone how we would even access and protect it? So I'll pause there for a second and let Questionables R Us Chief Product Officer Brooke tackle her approach for a minute.
Well, I'm going to pull the product management tools out of my hat and say, what problem are we trying to solve? I think most of my teams would tell you that's a typical question that I will respond back. When I hear things like this, it's always a question of what are we trying to solve? Do they really think they can move the needle if they have some kind of information? Harry, I completely agree. The vendor is now suspect number one in my mind.
Like someone's got a quota.
Yeah. And I would encourage potentially a buy build partner assessment to see if maybe there are other fish in the sea. So I don't know that I would jump out with a flat no out of the gate. It would be just inquisitive. What problems are we solving? Why are they problems? Are there better ways to do this? Are there other vendors and partners we could look at? That is my very product management answer to saying no, ultimately, to anything that would put the company at legal risk.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, the vendor is definitely run by gremlins and goblins, who are definitely deep into barrels of ale before they, roll out these ideas to you. Okay. Next scenario: Questionable Ideas R Us is contracting with a different predictive data analytics provider because we had to get rid of that one.
They listened, yay!
But this one is delivering, swift, actionable results for their clients. But this provider is relatively new, not that long out of stealth. But their assertive approach has led to significant gains at other companies. During further discussion, you learn that this vendor wants to essentially ingest proprietary data from your company with the claim that it'll provide the most detailed predictive outcomes possible as it trains its AI. Of course, now the trouble is the AI is going to be potentially retaining non-anonymized data, which might leak out into the wild. Your internal teams love this provider because of the splash they've made in the markets so quickly. But you can already hear the heavy footsteps of your interim CISO, Nikki Kneecaps, approaching. How do you navigate the impending intense discussion that is about to ensue?
And which family from Jersey is Nikki Kneecaps from? No.
Yeah, I think this goes back to setting the stage to make sure everybody's on the same page, right? These are very complex scenarios. Not everyone in the room on an executive team has the same level of technical understanding of risks and ramifications, and the things that keep Harry and I up at night may not be common across the entire leadership team. So making sure everyone's on the same page first. And then I think quickly getting into a conversation around the brand of the business and what you want to be known for. Great that there's a shiny object on the market. There's a lot of them these days. But I think most of us are very much of the walled garden approach, meaning our information, company or customer information, is not for anyone else to be training their model. And I have already had some very interesting internal legal conversations in my real company that are very similar to this, where we have a clear stance and we're not willing to bend, and our information is not meant to be training other models on the market. And our customers expect that of us, as we would of our vendors as well. Harry, how about for you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. As long as once we understand the problem that's being solved, so out of your product management hat, if that is clear and stated from a technical side. I hate when the IT and technical teams are always seen as the department of no. That should be reserved for finance and legal. That we find ways. So if we've answered the business question of what are we actually trying to solve for and how can it help, then we can look at, all right, one, the vendor is, Brooke, to your point, there's so many demos and so many Me Too's in the marketplace. Distinguishing a demo from actually reality is great. So I think, I heard where they're making a splash in the marketplace. That means they're in the market actually producing a product for other companies, helping. So we have some proven marketplace demands already. Can we do it safely? There's the technical acumen and capital budgets both come into hand when dealing with AI, and model training are real things. So there are a lot of companies, if questionables ideas are us, if we don't have the capital budget to go buy a bunch of Google AIU chips and time to go train models, we might have to look for an outside vendor. But that outside vendor needs to make sure, and we need to make sure with Nikki Kneecaps, that we have a walled garden approach, that they might be training our model, needs to be our model. It can't be shared. It can't be training that company's model. It has to be something that we would have to maintain, own, understand where the data is going, and then ultimately have the ability to push a button or give an instruction to say, you know what, if the relationship comes to an end, we need to ensure how you would destroy every bit of our data, our customers' data, to make sure that it is not traceable and not used for any other model. So if we can come to the understanding and securely understand that they can provide us a service to compete in the marketplace at an elevated level to allow our humans combined with AI power to be equal or better than our competitors in a safe manner, fantastic. But that safe manner has to be, all these levers have to be pulled, where data has to be cordoned off. It can't be shared. They can't train their own models, has to be our models, so on and so forth. Those are elements that how we can support the business and say, if you can define what you needed to do, we can help you get there. But the clear definition of what the problem is and what the outcome expectation is. And then secondly, can the vendor ensure that all these requirements are met? Or if not, Nikki's going to go pay you a visit.
Nikki's very much eager to put this plan in action. Is very eager to pay everyone a visit if they are not complying. Okay, great. All right, one last scenario and we'll wrap things up. All right. Questionable Ideas is all set to start using predictive AI, which by all accounts seems secure. And Nikki Kneecaps is very pleased with it. But the model it starts to present that it's starting to present repetitive biases in its actions. The AI calls for reducing engagement with one segment of customers in favor of prioritizing customers it believes are likely to prove more lucrative for questionable ideas or us in the long term. But it could mean alienating certain repeat clients. Your customer relations team wants a competitive edge, but there's no quick fix for this AI in its current form, as it always seems to come to this conclusion after repeated testing. Now, your options are to take the AI offline and potentially completely start over from scratch, delaying its use, or use this predictive AI as is while an alternative is developed. What do you recommend, and how do you communicate your needs to the technical and the operations teams on this?
Well, I'll take a stab at this one first. So, bias training, ethics training within AI is something that I'm glad you brought this question up. In Questionable's idea or us, because it's an imperative piece of how we not only integrate it into business, but how we integrate it into business then becomes part of our society, because business serves people and consumers at the end of the day. And there's not enough attention paid to it. So in this specific scenario, the question is, how is it coming up with that bias? So we have to do a regression analysis and understand what root data is actually being trained, making this model be trained this way. Because in the business side, there are such things as bad customers. Like a repeat customer might be great from a quant perspective, but the qual says they're repeat, but they're low margin or they buy a lot of things, but they call customer service and demand refunds all the time. So there are such things as bad customers. So understanding how is it coming up with these suggestions, and is it truly bias, or is it actually calling out really bad business practices that might be considered bias? But once you get into the data, it's actually layering or bringing to light something that is not bias, but actually is just a bad business practice or bad customer policies that the Questionable idea RS has. So let's say it is bias, and let's say that you can't understand how the model's coming to it, but it clearly is showing a bias that's not rooted in data. You take it offline. There's no question. Like if you can't control the bias, you take it offline and you understand why. If it's showing a hybrid approach of just interesting that there's some bias, but there is a lot of truth in what it's saying, then you don't let it make decisions autonomously. It's a super powered computer think of it as I always tell our technical teams, you're in charge of a calculator. The calculator is telling you some information. It's up to you to decide, is that information good or bad? Because you have the ability to bring in multiple dimensions to say, that actually makes sense to help me guide my decision, or that's complete nonsense, I'm throwing it out. So I think once you understand how it's coming to its conclusion based upon a little bit of regression analysis, you can make an easier determination. But at the end of the day, if there's bias that you can't explain, it should be in Questionable Ideas RS best interest to remove it and understand what is causing the bias, because that usually means that either there's bad tech or there's some interesting data that's making it be trained that way. Where's that data coming from, which could lead to other issues? So we have a data integrity issue or a tech issue in general.
I would echo everything that Harry just said. I think he said it perfectly. The one thing I will add is when the model is appropriate to roll out again, it sounds very beneficial, and I agree. It sounds like maybe the human bias, right, is clouding judgment potentially on a calculation that has now exposed something that we didn't otherwise see. But one thing that I will suggest in this case is that more of an audit trail is enabled. And what I mean by that is showing people the calculation and the sources and the why behind the insights or the recommendation seems to make all the difference in their ability to pinpoint problems in that. And if it is bias or if it's something else, or if it is truly happening that way, and we should now maybe take note of a change in strategy that needs to happen. So there's some great examples of tools out on the market right now that show you that step-by-step methodical processing of logic before it comes up with the final recommendation or conclusion. And I think that is the approach in the future of building trust. Eventually, you won't want to look at all of those steps, but we're not quite there yet. I think this is a good example of where those would be very useful to show before we just give the straight insight.
Or it also sounds like because questionable ideas are us, culture is interesting. Or we just say a few salespeople would just stop being lazy and stop relying on technology and do your job. That can probably do it too. But that just sounds like a cultural thing for questionable ideas are us.
Gotcha. Well, both of you have been fantastic in pulling questionable ideas are us from the brink, at least for this week. We'll see how the company does in future episodes. Listen, Brooke, Harry, you've been fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
AP, thanks for having us. Greatly appreciated. Harry, nice to meet you too.
Nice to meet you. Thank you for a great time today. Appreciate it on a Friday.